Sarah stared at the crumbling family crest above her grandfather's desk, its gold paint flaking like the trust she once had in him. A girl can't run this company. He'd spat yesterday, his voice thick with disdain, as if her 15 years of late nights and bold deals meant nothing. Now, with the boardroom door locked and her heart pounding, she was about to prove him wrong or burn it all down trying. The Thompson Timber Company had been a cornerstone of Pineview for 3 generations, its sawmills humming through wars, recessions, and storms. Sarah grew up in its shadow, trailing her father through the yards, learning the scent of fresh-cut pine and the weight of a ledger. Her father, Thomas, had been the heart of the business, teaching her to read contracts before she could drive. But when he died in a car accident 5 years ago, the reins passed to Grandpa Harold, a man carved from tradition and stubborn pride. At 78, Harold clung to the old ways: handshakes over contracts, men over women, and family over everything. Except, it seemed, when the family was Sarah. She'd worked tirelessly, rising from junior accountant to operations manager, cutting costs and securing deals that kept the company afloat. Yet Harold never saw her as more than Thomas's little girl. Last week, when she proposed a bold expansion into sustainable lumber, a plan that could save the struggling business, he laughed her out of the room. "This ain't no place for experiments, Sarah, or women," he'd said, his words slicing deeper than any blade in the mill. The board, all aging men loyal to Harold, nodded like puppets. Worse, he'd announced his plan to sell the company to a corporate chain, claiming it was better to let it die than let Sarah ruin it. The betrayal stung, but Sarah wasn't one to wallow. She spent sleepless nights digging through old contracts, financial records, and emails. Her apartment a war zone of coffee mugs and spreadsheets. She founded a clause in the company charter, buried in her great-grandfather's handwriting, that allowed a family member to challenge the CEO's decision if they could prove mismanagement. It was a long shot, but Sarah had nothing left to lose. She called an emergency board meeting, leveraging her father's old allies and her own reputation to force Harold's hand. The boardroom smelled of polish and regret as Sarah faced Harold across the mahogany table. The board members, 6 men in stiff suits, shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between her and the old man. Harold leaned back, his weathered hands folded, a smirk playing on his lips. "You think you can waltz in here and take my company," he said, voice low and mocking. "You're out of your depth." Narration. Sarah's pulse raced, but her voice was steel. "I'm not here to take it, Grandpa. I'm here to save it." She slid a thick folder across the table, its pages detailing Harold's mismanagement, missed contracts, outdated equipment, and a $2 million loan he'd hidden from the board to cover his own bad investments. Gasps rippled through the room. Harold's smirk faltered, his face reddening as he flipped through the evidence. "This is nonsense," he barked, but his voice cracked. She pressed on, her presentation a masterclass in precision. She outlined the decline in profits under Harold's reign, 20% revenue loss in 3 years, suppliers jumping ship, and workers unpaid for weeks. Then came her planned sustainable lumber certification, new markets in eco-conscious Europe, and a rebrand to honor the Thompson legacy while embracing the future. The board leaned forward, intrigued. One member, Mr. Callahan, a gruff man who'd known her father, nodded slowly. "She's got a point, Harold. Numbers don't lie." Harold slammed his fist on the table, silencing the room. "Numbers. This is my family's blood and sweat. You think you know better than me? Sarah, I'd rather see this place bankrupt than let a girl run it into the ground." The words hung heavy, a confession of his bias laid bare. Sarah's chest tightened, but she held his gaze, refusing to flinch. The boardroom felt like a powder keg, every whisper and shuffle amplifying the tension. Callahan broke the silence. "That's enough. Harold, you've had your time." He turned to Sarah, his eyes softening. "Let's hear her out." The others murmured agreement, their loyalty to tradition crumbling under the weight of her evidence. Harold's face twisted with rage, but he was cornered. Sarah seized the moment, detailing her vision with passion, jobs saved, families supported, and a legacy reborn. She spoke of her father, how he'd believed in her, and how she'd fight for his dream, even if Harold wouldn't. The vote was called. One by one, the board members raised their hands for Sarah. 4 out of 6. Harold's gavel hit the table like a gunshot, but it was too late. He was out. Sarah was named interim CEO, effective immediately. The room erupted in murmurs, some congratulatory, others stunned. Harold stood, his chair scraping loudly, and stormed out without a word, leaving behind a legacy he'd failed to protect. But Sarah's victory was bittersweet. The company was in shambles, debts piled high, workers skeptical, and suppliers wary. She threw herself into the work, her days a blur of meetings, repairs, and late-night strategy sessions. She secured a new loan, renegotiated contracts, and rallied the workers with a promise. This isn't just about lumber, it's about us, our town, our future. Slowly, the mills hummed again. Orders trickled in, then flooded. The sustainable certification landed, and European buyers signed on. Within a year, Thompson Timber was profitable, its name synonymous with resilience. Harold, meanwhile, retreated to his old cabin, refusing to speak to Sarah. Gossip swirled in Pineview. Some called her a hero, others a traitor. One day, she found a letter slipped under her office door, written in Harold's shaky hand. I was wrong. It read, "Your father would be proud." No apology, no warmth, just those words. Sarah stared at it, torn between anger and pity. She framed it, not as forgiveness, but as a reminder she'd fought for her place and no one could take it away. The cost was heavy. Sarah lost her grandfather's love, if it was ever hers to begin with. She lost nights of sleep, years of peace, and the naive belief that family always comes first. But she gained something greater, a company reborn, a town revitalized, and a voice that echoed beyond Pineview. She stood in the mill one evening, watching the saws carve through pine, the rhythm steady and strong. This was her legacy now, built not on tradition, but on truth. What do you think? Was Sarah right to challenge her grandfather? Or should she have let the business go to honor family loyalty? Share your thoughts.